Hey everybody, it's your host, Diana Chen, and you're listening to an episode of Minihash, a condensed episode of Rehash where we do a deep dive into one focused topic with a past guest. Hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rehash. We have a very special interview today with Jim, Chang, co-founder of Catalyst and CrossCats, their newest product. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Diana. Thanks for allowing me to eat so much spicy food 2 nights ago. That was really a memorable...
No, you're right. I should start by asking, how are you feeling?
I feel like I've grown a lot from that experience. Really appreciate you forcing me to eat all that spicy food.
Are you fully recovered?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm built different, so we're good. I'm not like David and Grant, you know? I got another gear in me. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. We won't talk about all of the photos that came through the Telegram chat in the meantime, but I'm glad you're feeling back to normal and that you feel like a new man.
Same man. Yeah, just...
Better.
Yeah, exactly.
So happy to hear that. I want to talk to you today about CrossCats, which, as everybody can see, you're holding cupcakes, your mascot. And I love the lore that you built around cupcakes and Huevo, obviously my favorite character. Mm-hmm. And Maya, who I feel like is just like an unseen third character. But the story has just begun, right? So we'll see a lot more of it in the future. Catalyst is something you've been working on for a while, and CrossCats is a product that Catalyst is building, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about like the journey so far, building Catalyst, and then what prompted CrossCats.
Sure. So we started building Catalyst about 2 years ago. And its initial conception, well, funny enough, there's been a few conceptions of it, but it was initially a cross-chain AMM on top of IBC. And so it would be servicing Cosmos chains. We were very bullish app chains, very bullish the proliferation of app chains. And so that was kind of the initial conception of it. And then about a year in, we actually decided to take the same concept, but generalize it away from IBC and away from Cosmos. And we had to switch our strategic priorities to actually focus on Ethereum rollups, so EVM rollups. And that was based on what we were seeing in the market. We were seeing less app chains getting spun up and more rollups using architectures like rollups as a service, like OP-Stack and Arbitrum Orbit. And so it was the same product, just a slightly different focus. And we went to market with that about 8 months ago. And it has done okay, I would say. But we felt like there was an opportunity to accelerate it further by launching a new product and going to a new market. And so this is where CrossCats comes in. It's the second product that we're building and bringing to market. It's effectively, in a very similar lens, a repositioning of strategy, where instead of focusing on EVM rollups, and we're also not focusing on Cosmos app chains, we're actually focusing on a new kind of space in the market that we're calling AltVMs, which are effectively these new chains that are coming out with new VM specifications, like move chains like Swiaptos and Movement, like SVM chains like Solana, Soon, Eclipse, a few others. And we're making a bold bet that they're going to be really big in the future and be as big as Ethereum effectively. And with that, we actually changed the mechanism as well. And so instead of being an AMM, now we're using an intent-based bridge, which we can talk more about in a second. But it's effectively a new mechanism that has a bunch of trade-offs that make it a lot cheaper and faster for end users. And we feel like it's the right mechanism to bring to market, just given what we've been seeing. And yeah, that's kind of the journey that we've been on so far.
Gotcha. So I'm curious, like as a founder, how do you decide when to make these pivots? So you started with IBC and Cosmos, then went to, EVM, now AltVMs. How do you decide when it's time to move on to the next thing?
It's not something that I particularly do deliberately, I would say. There's not like metrics that founders are tracking on a day-to-day basis that allow for them to make that calculus to pivot. But I think it comes from a function of 2 major pieces. So the first piece is what adoption are you seeing and how difficult is it to grow from that adoption, right? And so if you launch and you really don't do anything outside of building a product and writing a tweet, you kind of have a baseline, right? You haven't done any additional product features. You haven't done additional go-to-market campaigns. It's kind of that. And then when you add more levers onto it, or you pull more levers rather, you add more marketing campaign, you add more features, you expand in more chains. Does that really move the needle? And then you kind of assess, if it comes easy, then you're doing great, right? Growth is very organic. If it's not coming easy, then it's worth kind of an assessment. And then the second bucket is kind of what are the macro tailwinds that are happening, right? Are you building towards something that might be disrupted or disintermediated? If so, how do you navigate that? So I think you have to be pretty well read and understanding how the space is shifting, and it shifts a lot, right? Especially in crypto. So that's kind of the rough framework that I would tell other founders.
It seems like you spent a lot of time like reading and researching and almost like predicting the future to the best of your ability and putting on that investor hat of saying like, where is this market going? Like, where are we going in the future? What's going to be big? What has less potential? And to just hedge your bets towards what you can based on the knowledge that you have.
Yeah, it's also like talking to smart people a lot, right? I can't read every tweet, every blog post, but collectively within my network probably have. So it's just about finding those super nodes of information and scaling up that network to allow you to be able to digest a lot of information.
Yeah. What does that process look like for you? Because I know I've talked to, for example, like Jonah Ehrlich from Den, who I think has done a really good job of conducting user research, talking to users, really understanding their pain points. I know the way that they onboarded us, and I think, which is the same way they onboarded everyone, is he just got on a call with me and was like, here's the link, now go and do it. And then he just watched me do it and like didn't say a single word and like watched where I had issues, got stuck and couldn't figure it out. And he's okay, that's where we need to fix the UI, or that's where we need to do whatever. So is that similar to your process of talking to smart people or talking to users, or do you have a different approach?
Jonah's really good at eating glass, chewing glass, basically, which is, I guess, like a funny, whimsical statement of doing the really hard thing that doesn't scale and having learnings from it. I certainly apply a similar framework depending on what we're trying to accomplish. So Jonah is a great example because he builds B2B, right? Den is effectively a B2B tool for organizations to coordinate transactions on chain. And so he has a very limited set of customers that can give him feedback. And so he gets a lot of really high signal feedback because those are his customers, yeah. And he can have very actionable feedback, right? I think we do a similar thing to a smaller scale. And when we look at our users, quote unquote, there's like two different buckets, right? The first side is like traders, people that are using the app. And so we'll put designs in front of them and get feedback on what makes the most sense. And of course, you have to have a hypothesis on what is the initial draft, but then you can iterate from that. On the second part, we also have a user group that are solvers. So these are people that are providing liquidity for the routes that we have. So AltVM routes. And so we get feedback from them, a very limited set of group of people, the same way Jonah does for his B2B customers, because this is more B2B. We're building tools that allow organizations to be able to provide liquidity. So it's different in our space because we are building for two different groups and one are individuals, but it's effectively a very similar thing.
So CrossCats then is a product that Catalyst is building. Catalyst is sort of the overarching company. Do you see yourself building more products similar to CrossCats in the future?
I'm just focused on what's in front of us.
Okay, let's talk about CrossCats. So let's talk more about CrossCats. Tell us exactly how it works, how people can use it, and where in the process you guys are with it today.
Yeah. So CrossCats is an intent-based bridge, and I mentioned this earlier.
Yeah. Love to know what that means.
Yeah. What effectively that means is there are end states that people want to have. And when they say out loud what they want to have, we would call that an intent. And what an intent basically means is, this is what I want to do. And so a good analogy would be you get a grab bike and you zoom in. You don't exactly know what streets you're going to be taking, but you know that the person that you're hugging onto.
I don't hug.
You go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't go
Do you
shoulder.
hug them? You do this shoulder massage?
They don't let me. I go one back, one shoulder, and then I squeeze with my legs.
Okay. Everyone's got their strategy.
But you know where you're ending up, right? And it's
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that in a second. I think this is a super good analogy for intents.
Okay.
And so we do the same thing. There is a way in which people can express the end state that they want to be in, and they're relying on organizations or counterparties to take them there. And so that's where the solvers come in. And so there is this intent expression layer. And then there is effectively a broadcast to a network of solvers that are aware of that And then some of them choose to respond to that in order to fulfill that. And so the same way you grab a grab bike or you order a grab bike and a bunch of bikers, I guess, like motor bikers, they'll see it and some of them will say, nah, I don't really want to do it right now. I'm too busy doing something else. But some people will, and they will respond, and you will, well, not you, but the app chooses based on usually how close they are, ETA, right? And that's the same process for an intent-based bridge where solvers would come back. They'll usually come back within two dimensions. One is how quickly, right? Some of them are kind of assessing if it makes sense for them. Some of them are more eager. And also on the price, right? They're saying, I'm not going to do this for free. Here is my price. And usually you would want to go with the lowest one. So there's basically an auction mechanism for that. So that is precisely what an intent-based bridge is. And where CrossCats is different from other intent-based bridges, because there's a few in the market right now, is that we are hyper-focused on AltVMs, non-EVM chains, right? And you have to make certain trade-offs and design decisions in order to serve those type of chains because it is so different. Everything's different. The data schema, the way that accounts are handled, assets are handled. So for us, we had to make it as light as possible. We moved a lot of logic off-chain in order to allow for the ability to express intents and have solvers fill them on chains like move chains or SVM chains, etc.
How much more difficult is it to build a bridge across different chains versus within the EVM? Because just as a user myself, I think even bridging within EVM chains can be, I mean, it's like mostly smooth, more or less now, but sometimes it can still be a bit buggy. And I imagine moving funds across different chains, which I actually don't think I've done because I'm mostly just EVM, but I imagine that would be even more difficult. But like from the back end of like how things are actually working, how much harder is it to bridge between different chains versus within like an EVM?
Super hard. Yeah. I would invite you to try it.
Okay.
I actually want to watch you try it after this and we'll run a timer. I think it's going to take you more than 20 minutes. Genuinely from the second you click or the second you go to the bridge page to the second you get money into your wallet. I think it'd take more than 20 minutes because I've tried.
Challenge accepted. Okay, challenge accepted. Let's try. We're gonna try this after. I'm gonna get it done in under 20 minutes. But
the reason why it's so difficult is because it's just different. It's different. If you want to go from Ethereum to Sui, for example, you would have to download a new wallet. It would be Meridian or another wallet. You probably never even heard of Meridian, right? That's fine. Like I didn't either until a few months ago. And so that in of itself is a huge barrier. You go to these pages, you have to connect both your wallets, your EVM wallet and Meridian equivalent. And the first thing you say is, I don't have a Meridian wallet, right? I have to go download a Meridian wallet. Okay, great. Now you need gas. So where do you get gas? You have to get gas from a centralized exchange and then you have to transfer it. And you have to wait 10, 15, 20 minutes for that transfer to go through, right? Because of various internal checks that a centralized exchange would have to do before they send out the money. It's really painful. So that's the current experience.
I just remembered I did have an experience trying to do something similar to that recently, which was to apply for Rejected Con. Who was that hosted by?
Forma or Celestia?
Celestia.
Yeah.
And I tried submitting to the joke race, but I didn't have a Celestia wallet. And so I couldn't do it. And then I kind of just tried for maybe like 10 seconds and then got distracted by other things and stuff.
The perfect example. It's literally a perfect example.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is Forma is actually an EVM chain. So even though it was a different ecosystem, that's even easier than going to a completely different ecosystem that isn't EVM.
Yeah. So what aspects are the most challenging when it comes to bridging across chains?
For us to build or for a user right now?
I guess like from the builder perspective, is it like, you know, the speed is like really challenging to maintain? Is it like there's a lot of security concerns? What are the most challenging aspects of it?
I would say there's two. So the first one is that all the logic that we have on chain, like the intent expression, and we have this contract called the reactor where people can claim these intents, people as in solvers, that has to be ported to a new virtual machine. So there's a new language and there's a new way that data is expressed, new everything. And that's really difficult. There's a reason why a lot of bridges are EVM only because it's basically a copy and paste, right? I've done the writing of these contracts, this logic on Solidity, and now it's just copy paste. Sometimes there's small things that need to be adjusted for, right? But if you go beyond EVM, it looks completely different, and some things look more different than others. And so the moat of us being there is purely the fact that we did the hard work to actually port the logic to these different languages and virtual machines. So that's a high barrier to entry. I think the second barrier is you need to have solvers that are aware of those routes, right? And that's the trade-off between using an intent-based bridge versus using a AMM-based bridge like Stargate, is that you need to have some sort of counterparty that's participating. And if it's a brand new route, brand new chain, it's certainly difficult to have people that are already integrated to all the infrastructure of a new chain. So yeah, you have to convince them basically, whatever that entails.
Gotcha. And I guess like by choosing to build something like CrossCats, you're making a statement essentially that you believe the future is going to be more towards these AltVMs than the EVM. And I know I asked you this question on Hot Ones earlier this week, but since this is a new episode, what is your thesis on what the future of EVM is going to be versus the future of all of these AltVMs?
Yeah. So I do want to preface and say that our bet is partially because that we're really bullish AltVMs, but it's also partially based on the fact that we think that EVM right now, in terms of bridging, is very crowded. If you go on DeFi Llama right now and you look at how many bridges serve the route of, let's say, Arbitrum to Optimism, it's over 50. And I would say the top 3 capture 90% of the market share. So the other 48 are fighting for the scraps. And so you have to zag when everyone's zigging. And our initial bet was to actually serve long tail EVM chains and rollups. And that's a good bet. And we've seen players actually do that incredibly well, but we've seen them do well using the intent-based system. And so our bet was correct, but the mechanism wasn't competitive compared to people who made the similar bet as us, right? And so we're zagging even harder now, and we're not even doing long tail EVM rollouts. We're literally going past EVM. And that's a huge part to it, right? And I think that's where the reception has been super good, because there have been other teams that have left Ethereum and they're building on Solana or they're building on Movement. And the reception has been more negative because they've framed it in a way such that it felt very much antagonistic to Ethereum, right? Like Unlonely, for example. They left from Base to Solana. And the framing was, Base sucks and Solana's great. And we don't have that framing necessarily. We just needed to do our own thing. Basically.
Yeah. It's not so much that you're like bearish EVM, you don't think it's going to continue to grow, and you're like super bullish AltVM. It's more like you found your opportunity with AltVMs.
Yeah.
A lot more. Yeah.
I'm bearish EVM to the extent that I don't think it's going to be as dominant as it is right now. I think roughly if you look at on-chain volume, EVM probably has 70 to 75% of all volume right now between Base, Ethereum mainnets, Polygon, et cetera, et cetera. The other 25 would be Sui, Aptos, some Cosmos chains, right? Maybe Polkadot. I'm not sure. But I think the mix is going to look a lot more equal going forward. I think Move chains are going to be as high in market share as EVM chains. And there's going to be other ones. There will be WASM chains. There will be SVM chains. So it's going to be more of a not fragment, but equal mix of 3, 4, 5 things. And that's kind of what we've seen shake out in other industries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving forward, what is in the roadmap for CrossCats? When is the mainnet launch? When can people use it? What do people have to look forward to?
Yeah, so we announced a couple of weeks ago, and now we're just focused on launching, right? We want it to be a reality. We're not just yapping for the sake of Twitter engagement, right? So we want to launch. We're going to launch. I don't know when this comes out, but we'll be launching in a few weeks from now of when we're having this conversation. And our MO is to just keep shipping more versions. So the trade-off that we made that I mentioned was that we've made it as simple as possible in terms of on-chain logic such that we can rewrite this to a lot of different virtual machines, right? For a lot of different languages for those virtual machines. And we'll just keep doing that. And we're going to move much faster than everyone else. It's open space. We've already seen other competitors or other projects try to go after the same market, but we're going to run faster than them. So we have a fire under our butts to execute on this, and that's what we're going to do.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Any final thoughts on CrossCats before we go?
I like it.
I like it too. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me. 0xGem on Twitter. Give him a follow, crosscats.xyz. Any links I'm missing other than that?
No.
Okay. Catalyst Sys, right? On Twitter.
Yes.
For the Catalyst account and to stay up to date with all things CrossCats. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and good meow.
Good meow.